Okay, this is Mark A. Bell, and I'm chairing the subcommittee called Grants and Data for Athens in Motion. And today we're going to be discussing some potential projects that we'll be applying for funding to implement in the coming year, hopefully within the Athens community. Joining me today, Jake Moss, James Barlament, who are members of Athens in Motion on the subcommittee, and Stephen Bailey, who is with the Public Works and Transportation. Is that the department? Yes.
That's right.
Okay, got that right. Thank you. So I guess I appreciate that people have put up several projects, potential projects. I didn't add who's put each one up. I have some guess over who did each one, and I know I proposed the first one. So maybe just I'll briefly run through the big picture of what these projects are, and then we can discuss kind of pros and cons and how we want to move forward. So does that sound like a good plan?
Awesome plan. Yeah, for sure.
All right, good. So the first one was something I've always had as a concern, is that people don't know how to find the greenway or what's the safest way to get to greenways and Firefly and other multi-use paths, and using surface streets, using non-multi-use paths essentially, and so that would be working with Transportation and Public Works to develop signage, as well as working with folks on the Greenway Commission and Firefly Trail to disseminate information about as level as possible and as safe as possible low traffic routes. So that's one. The next one is a really innovative project that Ike Choi at the College of Education.
Mark's frozen.
A matter of implementing that, and also it looks like someone added to that, also thinking about adults who drive through school zones and doing the same thing for adults as well. And that would be really primarily graduate student driven. We might have graduate students in health promotion or in Ike's department in the College of Ed that would be implementing that, and a budget of $8,000 to $18,000. Every crossing is a parade. I think Jake might have proposed that one. And that is the idea, is that you create a fun, visually entertaining, visually exciting way for people to cross streets. So it could be, I like the idea of sort of a Chinese dragon where kids would all, get into a little dragon and cross the street, or that the crossing guard would be dressed like the Cat in the Hat, or, things like that are creative, entertaining, pleasing, so drivers see nice, a positive for these stupid kids, which is how, sometimes when people are in a hurry, they may think that way. And then the last one is a budget of $0, which is an excellent budget, and that's a matter. And James, did you propose that one?
No, it's actually Roswell. I think, right?
I don't know.
Not hearing, so
yeah.
Okay.
It's Roswell.
Oops, we're losing connection here. Hold on. But this one would be to have a little blurb about bikes in every school newsletter or digest that gets distributed to kids and parents. And so it would be ACC kids at all grade levels are the target audience. And it would be just essentially working with the communications folks in the schools to add something that we could provide the content and they would disseminate it. Wondering if that's my connection.
Well, sometimes we're just motionless. It's hard to tell.
Any thoughts about these?
Maybe let's start with this last one, because I wanted to ask James, because I feel like he's the person who will know how feasible this is, what schools have newsletters and what sort of content there is in them, and whether this would be an appropriate, addition to those, and who we would. I mean, it seems like there's a zero budget for it. I don't know if there would be any costs associated with it, but it would be good. It would mostly be a matter of coordination and talking to people and then somebody actually writing the content, which I was kind of thinking if we were going to do this, we could task Teresa with, because she's in this is a good strong overlap between grants and communication and education, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you think, James?
I think that if not every school, almost every school has a newsletter. So it is feasible in that way. There is some kind of delivery system of a principal email or a newsletter that goes home at least once a month for parents. Sometimes it's printed, sometimes it's online. At the district level, we have something we call the e-update. And I don't know if this would be appropriate to go in there, but that's kind of like there's a district level newsletter that goes out. But I definitely know who to talk to about this. We have a new, the director of community engagement, which is Lawrence Harris now, who used to be over Athens Career Academy, is now over the communications department as well. And so that's kind of been taken into a new direction. It's more like community outreach. I think that he would, if I'm guessing for Lawrence, I think he would love this idea. He's a big proponent of, he uses greenways. I see him on the greenway all the time.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that he would be supportive of this. I would need to get from him, he probably knows better than I do, what schools have a regular newsletter that goes out and what format it's in. We could talk to Erin Podvin as well, who's another new person in that department, is over kind of like community outreach as well. I'm sure she would be supportive of it as well, knowing her. So I can follow up with Lawrence and Erin on this idea. I think it's a great idea. I think, and it kind of relates to, it actually relates to a couple of these as well. Obviously, or all of them actually. Safe crossings, wayfinding to find the greenway. I don't know if a lot of our families and students know how to find the greenways and paths and trails around Athens. That could be a great kind of communication device to, sort of start number one in, the grant idea number one. Obviously the project for, making crosswalks fun and exciting, that could be something that's embedded in this newsletter as well. So it's a great potential vehicle for all of these projects to kind of get them off the ground, because they all kind of, could involve families and students. So I like it, but I could follow up with them, certainly.
Sounds great. Another question is whether we would want the content to be specific. If there were different newsletters, would there be content that was specific to, like, for example, if you go to Bernie Harris Lions, like, what are the opportunities for safe routes to school, if any, and what are the nearby, like, active transportation facilities? I think that would be part of it too.
And part of it, the project that I always think of with these, and I apologize for not putting it in here, but just a basic safe routes to school program for areas that have sort of a lot of transportation vulnerability, like Bernie Harris Lions, like you said, Jake. I think about JJ Harris. I always think of JJ Harris, Cleveland Road Elementary. They don't even have bus service. There's very little bus service in the whole BHL zone. So those kinds of things as well, just promoting safe routes to school.
Is safe routes currently funded?
We don't have any safe routes to school programs that are funded right now. No.
Which is, unfortunate, but it's also an opportunity, because if you want to apply to the Safe Routes for School program, we can, we have demonstrable need.
And if I remember correctly, the Safe Routes programs in the past, a lot of them have been for Barrow and Chase Street, which, they already have they already have safe routes to school. I mean, more than a lot of other schools, there's a lot more transportation infrastructure, especially sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's probably just a thing where when you get into a place like CHL or Cleveland Road or JJ Harris, you're talking about having to work with the city to build the infrastructure. And I don't know if that's out of the scope of the Safe Routes to School grant. That's kind of something separate,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we need to. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say about the Crossing Paths, the virtual reality project.
Mm-hmm.
That one, I think my hesitation would be in the part about adding the adults, because I'm not sure how you would, identify, recruit, have people participate in that. And it might be better to start off by focusing on kids, getting it working, making sure it's, implemented successfully, but then, maybe next year or some other time scaling it up or developing a new module. And I don't know what kind of bandwidth Ike has to develop a new module at this point.
Yeah. So, okay. So I wrote both parts of this. So my hesitation with all of these projects is that the best practices in terms of pedestrian stuff are not to focus on the pedestrian, right? It's not the pedestrians who are necessarily causing the problem, it's the drivers. So with both of these, with I'm a little hesitant to just have programs that teach people how safe pedestrian skills, because the safest pedestrian, in the world is still super vulnerable on, our busy streets that have high speed limits, regardless of how safe they're being. So that was my sort of impetus for trying to think about how we could also, as traumatic as it would be. I mean, so I'm imagining a kid's version of this, where, it's, I mean, I've done I've been in Ike's lab and I've done the VR, or watched somebody do the VR simulation. And it's, it's very kid friendly. It's very PG. The adult version, I kind of want adults to experience the trauma of running over a virtual child. I mean, maybe that's extreme, but I mean, people don't think about the worst possible outcome, and that would ruin, that ruins people's lives when that happens. And it happens a lot. I mean, it's happened in Athens in the past 5 years, I'm pretty sure. So, I'm not saying like it would be a blood on the asphalt level, R-rated virtual reality experience, but something that would make drivers think about the potential outcomes of distracted driving, or not being alert and checking their sort of the alleys where you would be likely to see pedestrians and stuff like that. I don't know what that would look like. And again, you're right. I don't know what it would take to develop that. I also have a good relationship with Ike, and I'm happy to reach out to say, we're thinking about doing this sort of thing. There would be potentially funding for a graduate student, and just seeing where he is with this, because also, faculty who do a lot of stuff, they move on from one project to the next. So I knew this existed as of last year. And he was super gung ho about it, and he's implemented it in China and South Korea. So it's tested. That's one of the nice things about it, is it's tested, and he has like good data, like preliminary data to say it's worked in these contexts. So I think there's potential there, but we would need to work on what exactly it would look like. But I think you're right. I couldn't really think of how you would effectively recruit adults for this program.
And I actually worry that the ones who would be recruitable, who would be interested in doing something like this, are the ones that need it the least.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So there's that issue. I know there are some existing simulations. I know that these exist where people are put into a kind of a driving simulator, and then they simulate a bicycle, and people don't see the bike. They're sort of blind to things they're not expecting to see. And that's why you get greater safety when you have more bikes on the road and people walking because they're used to seeing them. And they'll do things like they'll throw out a baby carriage or a bike and then ask the person, "Oh, what did you see the bike?" They're like, "What bike?" And so I know those have been done, and I've read about those. So I don't know if there are existing simulators that are out there, but again, I'm just trying to picture how you would get people to participate, maybe during a parent-teacher night or something like that at the schools. I don't know. I don't have kids, so I don't know how that all works. But are there events or where people show up at the school or have to come to school, and that might be one way to get at least the parents involved. Of course, then you make them so terrified of walking that they won't let their kids walk.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of events in a normal circumstance that parents come to the schools. You got principal coffees, ice cream socials, parent-teacher conferences. I think the issue with those right now is that it might be a little bit, down on the priority radar right now. And the one thing that I could think of that could be a good venue for this would be something like Hillfest, which is more like a carnival atmosphere. Like it could be a VR booth where parents and students could go in there if you're going to try to recruit parents into it. I think it'd be a lot easier to stick to students right now, because they could do this it could be a good activity for like a PE class or something like that.
Is it something that they can do remotely? Do they have to? Is there a physical device, Jake, that they have to engage with, or is it something they could do online?
It's a VR. It's
like goggles.
VR goggles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is of course a caveat to any grant application right now, is that you have to try to sort of predict what level of social distance there would be during the project period that you're proposing, which is very difficult. And I can tell you right now, most funding agencies or at least the major federal ones are basically saying, okay, pretend that all of this stuff is going to be over by the time this project starts, because otherwise they just it's too hard to evaluate. So presumably if your project gets funded and it would be so heavily dependent on face-to-face interactions or something that would be a high risk activity, and if COVID were still rampant, and probably you would just get deferred or not funded in that round. So yeah, that is something to think about. And your point about priorities is well taken too. And that's, so I mean, I did want to, I mean, so the plus side of COVID right now is that people are spending a lot more time outside and a lot more time, biking and walking. So that is something that if we can find ways to leverage that fact in grant applications, then I think you can sort of turn it to our advantage. So maybe the wayfinding proposal would be especially, would get a little boost from the fact that more people are trying to find active transportation or active, sort of transportation-based recreation opportunities in our community.
Stephen, I have a question for you. With regards to the first proposal with the wayfinding and the signage, I mean, that gets into obviously a lot of policies and priorities, and working with Transportation Public Works. Any thoughts on that? Is that feasible? Is that something you're already thinking about and talking about? Again, the idea is to have signs not on the multi-use pass, but directions or suggestions or maps that would be how to best get there.
Absolutely, and that's something Hillary's talked about as a priority, to look at either designing signage or a routing app, or some paper or physical materials as well. There's actually a pretty robust GIS map for bike and ped routing right now that we have. It doesn't have a great user interface yet, so that's something we probably need to look into. But it's something similar to like Map My Ride, or it's or one of those apps that are on the commercial market out there. We have those bike lane or bike network and ped network center lines drawn, and people can kind of try and do a route from point A to point B, and it maps their best route based on the type of transportation they're taking. We even have a way now to kind of rate it based on comfort level. So if people, if you're a avid biker, you could take these, level 3 routes that have, some sharper curves and higher hills, and otherwise you can take some of the lighter routes. So it's definitely a work in progress. I don't have a timeline on when that will be done. We've only got one GIS person right now who's working on a lot of stuff, but it's certainly in the works. And then as far as signage, I think this is great. Even if we just got a grant that helped to design some initial signage, we could then utilize that within every upcoming multi-use path project and put a little bit of money for the specific project towards signage. So that would be, I think it's great. You want to keep some consistency and standards on that. But we should capitalize on the fact that we've got at least 2 of these coming up soon. I mean, Cherokee just got approved as multi-use. Jefferson River Road got good feedback as going multi-use. So all these upcoming, and Barber's coming down the line. So all these that are potential multi-use paths already have some built-in funding there. It's just going back and finding, doing the best wayfinding signage for the existing routes that probably needs extra funds.
Okay. All right. So I guess one question is, do we want to apply for, 2 grants or 1 grant? And we still have to decide where we want to apply.
Go ahead.
No, go.
So I think, I feel like this wayfinding one would be a pretty low-hanging fruit. We would mainly need to determine where the signage it would be best, would be most effective, because there is some signage. I'm thinking of there's a sign that to the Trail Creek Greenway, for example. But you would want the wayfinding to be somewhere that was high traffic and would be for example, from Lexington Road. I don't think it's very clear how to get to the Firefly Trail, or to the I don't know. I mean, this is Mark's idea. So Mark, I'm sure you've thought about locations, but it would mainly just be a matter of figuring out locations, yeah, I mean, the proposal would be pretty easy to write. So I would advocate for this one. And then also, pending the outcome of James' research, the newsletter one, I think, is something that, we can probably get going as well. I'm happy to reach out to Ike about the VR stuff. And if he's wildly enthusiastic about it, then, that could happen as well. But I would suspect that that would be further down the line, probably.
Yeah. So maybe going forward, I'm happy to take the lead on the wayfinding project and start to, figure out where we might want to apply for that and put together, budget proposal, that kind of thing. And then James, if you follow up on the newsletter idea, and then Jake, if you can talk to Ike about the Crossing Paths project, maybe focusing primarily on kids initially, then that would be maybe a plan going forward.
Sure. I have a question for probably Stephen and Jake. And you guys probably think I'm always just advocating for school stuff, but as far as the wayfinding goes, when I look at the master Greenway plan, it looks like it was pretty intentional for schools to be included in the greenways, or at least somewhere in in the connection. This may be far down the road, but could wayfinding sort of start with trying to figure out how to get from your school to a greenway or multi-use path, or are we too far away on that?
By trying to figure out a way, you mean a way that doesn't exist yet?
Yeah, I guess that doesn't make sense.
No, I mean, it does make sense. I mean, so the Greenway Network plan was developed in 2015. completed in 2016. And this was before Athens in Motion existed. So if you look at the maps, they have a lot of street-based crossings that are the yellow and black hatched things. And those, as Athens in Motion got going and the commission formed, and we sort of realized that those connections would really be under the domain of TPW and Athens in Motion rather than under the Greenway Commission. So we haven't been including on-street connections in like our SPLOST and T-SPLOST proposals because this is a huge project, and the Greenway Commission's piece of it is, the actual sort of off-road multi-path. But all of those, but the intent is that, when we're all trying to think about, walkability and bikeability. And so that's why those connections are in there. And some of them are probably easier than others. For example, I forgot to check on that. So the commission voted on the Jefferson River Road, right, Stephen? What did they vote?
So they haven't voted. They had a work session, and there was overwhelming support for the multi-use option.
Of course there is. So so that's one that is pretty close to coming to fruition, I think, in terms of at least accessibility of safe routes to that school. So, and then there are ones that are way further down the line, and maybe there's a tier 3 Athens in Motion project that would make a connection, but
So I think I like the idea of wayfinding from schools to greenways and, using them as part of the safe route where that's feasible, but I don't think we should limit it to that. I'd like to keep those in mind and have those be one of the chief types of routes that we want to focus on, but maybe not to the exclusion of other, in town, like for folks who are just in the middle of downtown. How do you get to the greenway from, Jittery Joe's or from someplace like that?
Right.
The other thing that was supposed to.
Sorry, two thoughts real quick. Mark, with the wayfinding, I might suggest if you would partner with Hillary and then Dan Sizemore with Leisure Services to look, maybe there's a way to kind of identify prioritizing where those signs go. They can help with how to help see that visually. And then as far as the signs themselves, we actually have a sign shop over in traffic engineering to build some of this stuff. So once the design exists, we can really do some cost savings and create some of these ourselves in-house.
Okay.
And we could probably show this matching too in the grant proposal.
That's right. And James, a follow-up with your thought. I agree. We had Safe Routes to School actual project money as part of SPLOST 2011. And all of that's dried up since then. I mean, it's good. We've done quite a few of these connections, but I think that as you look at potential safe routes funding, or as we look at potential future safe routes funding, it could be maybe geared toward closing some of those connection pieces between greenways and schools. I think that's a cool idea.
I wanted to mention in the context of downtown that we were talking to the Downtown Development Authority for a while about creating, because they have those banners downtown that are on the posts and whatnot. So there was, I've forgotten his name. His last name is Lynn, David Lynn. So we were talking about having like a series of those banners that would lead down, East Broad Street from the 5 Points intersection to the Greenway. So explicitly just like taking people to the Greenway. So that might be something that we could, an idea that we could resurrect as well.
Yeah, and that's that's an important route for folks to know about. So, okay.
I'll have to look back through my emails. They were going to pay for it, and then I think we didn't like the design and let them do that, and then we didn't hear it back from them. So,
Okay. And one thing that's always, and this is maybe a bit of a side issue, that is that once you're on the Firefly, or when you get off the Firefly Trail where the old Jittery Joe's Roaster was, it's a steep climb to get into downtown. And what do people, there's a lot of people that just won't do that, and it's a big impediment to biking. They can walk their bike up, but people don't like to do that either. I remember this was a long time ago, and I don't know, Jake, if you remember this, but we were getting a tour of the multimodal facility. They said they designed the elevator to be extra large so it could have bikes. People could put a bike into the elevator and then go use the elevator to get up into the parking, the top level of the parking deck, and then have that be a way to get downtown. I don't know if I haven't tried that. Every time I ride by, I think I ought to try that. See I don't know where it dumps you out. I don't know where I think it dumps you out into the parking deck, actually. But
I ran up that hill this morning.
Yeah. If you're fit, it's fine. And maybe as more people get e-bikes, it's not a big deal. But that was always one thing nobody would think of doing that, and I'll have to try it out one of these days and see if it makes sense.
Yeah, that's
well. What about your proposal for a Norwegian-style bike elevator going from the Firefly Trailhead up to the 5 Points intersection? I think I did the numbers at one point, and it only cost about $860,000.
There you go. See, I love it. Stephen, do you know what we're talking about?
Stephen is muted, I guess.
No, I haven't heard of a Norwegian style elevator.
So it's basically built into the pavement, and it's like a foot pedal, and you put your foot on it, and it's a continuous loop, and it just drags you up the hill. So
it's basically like a people mover for a person and a bike, but less like it's not like a airport people mover. It's like a track.
Yeah.
Anyway,
interesting.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that's within our scope, probably. But anyway, so do we have enough things to do to move forward, or
I think each of us has an action item, so
okay,
sweet.
Call that a successful.
Good. All right. So we should probably pick another time to meet, so we can circle back and kind of finalize some of these things.
Okay.
A couple weeks, is that enough time?
Yes.
Sure.
Is this a pretty good time?
I will be out of town 2 weeks from today.
Oh, okay. All right. So
the week after that would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be out of town that Monday too, so anytime for the 29th to the 2nd.
Okay. Yeah, that works. 29th, 2nd, 30th works. 30th is actually probably better a little bit.
30th is better for me too. The 20th,
Sure.
The 28th and 29th are like 5-hour Zoom days each.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be presenting at a conference in Europe, which is virtual, and they gave me a 9 a.m. time slot in Europe, so it's like 4 a.m. here.
Oh no!
Like, are you kidding me? We'll see. Yeah, I don't know if I'll do it. I might just record something and have them play it. Anyway, let's see. So maybe how's 1 o'clock on that day, the 30th?
We need Stephen too.
Yeah,
that works for me, and I'll send out a WebEx invite for that.
Okay, so 1 p.m. on the 30th. Great. Okay, thank you. Thanks for taking notes, Jake. Appreciate it.
Are we going to talk about data?
Oh, yeah, data. I guess we should talk about data. What's the status of our data? There was somebody still working on cleaning up that transportation accident data. but I don't know what who they were working with Hillary, I think, primarily.
Yeah.
So Samantha, our intern, has actually graduated and been hired to a GIS company now. So we are looking for a new intern to pick up the torch on that.
Okay. Yeah.
And what kind of? It's an unpaid position, I'm guessing.
No, it's paid. I think it's
Oh.
$10 an hour, maybe 11.
Mhm.
So if you all have if you all think of anybody who's working their way up through either planning into a planning degree or GIS, send them. I actually send them Hillary's way, so we can think about replacements for that.
Yeah, I have no idea. That's just not my area. There is a traffic safety group within the College of Public Health. James, familiar with, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if you can. Does Carol?
Yeah.
Can you get in touch with Carol to ask about that?
I could. Yeah. There's. They have. Well, they used to have 2 graduate students, but if this is a separate, paid internship, then, we could get somebody else, and they mainly work out of health promotion.
Right.
And I don't know. I guess like health promotion would be a pretty good fit. What do you think, Mark? Or would it need to be epidemiology or biostat?
No, it would be. I don't know. It seems like somebody who's maybe quantitatively oriented would be a better fit, or who understands how to work with GIS. I don't know to what extent they really need to be experts in GIS to do that.
Right.
Or not. Or how much data is there left to do? How far did they get, Stephen? Samantha?
I'm not sure. I can ask Hillary or Jimmy over in that office. I can report back.
Okay. Yeah, because we certainly, there probably would be a grad student. I don't know how to identify them. Maybe somebody in geography would know or be able to tell us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jerry Shannon has a good, his community GIS is a good little program too. They've done a lot of good work. They built the Athens Social Atlas, if y'all are familiar with that. Pretty cool little tool. It's a little shiny app tool.
Who is that again?
Jerry Shannon.
Okay.
Over in geography.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our Athens in Motion prioritization, like the criteria for scoring roads, actually a lot of those numbers came from the social mapping atlas over there.
Oh,
so
cool.
It's a lot of census data, but it pulls directly from that app.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really good app.
Okay. So I guess is the main task at this point to find a new intern who can continue to work on this data?
Sounds like it. Yeah. So I could follow up with Carol and Jerry on that to see if they have anybody who would be really good with that.
How many hours a week is it, Stephen?
Good question.
I think it's either 10 or 20. I'll have to look back and see for that specific one.
Okay.
So the other person, and maybe Mark already knows, is Lila Ralston.
Oh yeah.
Mark Ralston's. So I went to I forget what it's called, but it was the public health conference, the local conference thing. And there were a couple of poster presentations by her students who were part of her whatever shop who on like traffic fatalities in Athens and stuff like that. So that might be another she might know of someone.
Okay.
Yeah. What is Mark's? Does Mark work with the Firefly? Is he involved with that?
Yeah, he's the president, I think, of the Firefly.
Okay.
1C3.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So I can. I'll check with Lila. I can do that. I know her.
Cool.
Yep. She was always the first person to raise her hand with a comment. She was the Hermione of my class. Yeah, that's a good person. Yeah, I'll email her and see if she knows of anybody might be interested in an internship. So cool. Okay.
All right.
That's an action item. Any other data related issues?
We did have a fatality over the weekend,
Hmm.
a pedestrian fatality. I was communicating with Elliot Caldwell about it because we try to pull stuff out of the Gears database, which is where all this data is coming from for Samantha, who is cleaning that data.
Mm-hmm.
But it hasn't been, we don't have any details on it yet, really. It happened out by the Bulldog Inn out there on 441. And that's a spot where a couple of other incidents have happened involving a fatality or serious injury. And the two that happened previous in the last 5 years, I went back and looked, both involved alcohol use by the pedestrian. So I don't know if that's the case with this one. There is a liquor store there on the right side across from the Bulldog Inn. And of course, there's the large venue that's being built. And we're unsure, I don't know if you guys know anything about how that venue is going to change the traffic pattern there, but you would think that maybe when that venue gets built, there's going to have to be a traffic light and maybe some sidewalks there that could improve that area. Because that does seem to be a little hot spot for fatality and serious injuries for pedestrians, at least.
Mm-hmm. So it's 441 just north of the loop. Is that where Bulldog Inn is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just north of Bowley Drive.
Yeah.
And that's where they're building whatever it is, the 8,000 seat amphitheater.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Steven knows anything about the status of that in terms of TPW stuff.
I haven't seen the plans personally, but we've been talking with them a lot as they try and get ready for this, I guess, drive-in concert that they're holding there. So they're trying to get some emergency access set up, but I haven't seen the plans as far as traffic changes and that kind of thing. I can ask around them.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting. And that's also a potential area for wayfinding in terms of getting people to the Sandy Creek, section of the Greenway from there.
True. Yeah.
That's obvious.
There was a while where they were talking about having an overt connection to the Greenway, but the logistics of getting across that street somehow, I think, were sort of ended up nixing that idea.
Getting across 441, you mean?
Yeah.
If there was a light there at
Right.
the venue, it could be done. But yeah, I hear you. That's a really gnarly street.
I mean, it's a highway in the middle. It's basically a freeway in the middle of town, so.
Really poor design.
Steven.
There's nothing.
Not mine.
State road.
Has the Greenway, the Sandy Creek, the pedestrian only, horse only part of Sandy Creek Trail? Yeah. What's any update on the status of that? This is more out of curiosity than anything. Nat once saw me. He saw me once and said, "What do you think about paving that?" And I said, "That would be amazing," but I don't know if that was ever considered.
So there are various. The last I heard is that they were doing a study to try to determine what the best route was. There are people who don't want that trail to be paved, and I think that it is not pavable in its current route because it just goes through too many lowland areas. So one thing that the study was going to do was try to determine an alternate route, and maybe that would be paved eventually when there was money to do that, leaving the original trail as it is, and it would kind of end up being seasonal. But the other part of it is, of course, that as we have more extreme weather and more flooding events, it becomes just impossible to keep repairing the Cook's Trail as it is. So I don't think there's much of a, speaking editorially, I don't think there's too much of a future for the existing Cook's Trail as an official trail. I mean, obviously people still go down it. I don't know if they're wearing hip waders sometimes, but
that's really sad though, because that was a nice trail.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of that as a way of crossing, because it crosses under the 441, right? At some
It
point.
does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I've never actually walked on it, so I don't know. I don't know it personally, but you
I
know
used
that.
to do it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's one way to get under, but you know that's probably not feasible in the short term, certainly. Okay. Anything else that I've forgotten to talk about? All right. In that case, I guess we can adjourn. And
Right.
Jake, are you going to send around some action items for us?
Sure. I also I gave myself and James action items that should have emailed us, but I couldn't get Mark's to work. But I'll do that. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Great. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for setting this up. Appreciate your help with all this and your input. It's always good to have you here. And we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
John.